everyone. We have with us Mr. Kumar Rajagopalan, who is the Vice President and Country Head of Disys India. And thank you, Mr. Kumar, for joining us in this show. Ati, welcome to you.
Good afternoon, Anand. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Kumar. Friends, before I start this journey with Mr. Kumar for about 45 minutes or 1 hour, I thought I will quickly introduce Mr. Kumar to all of you. Kumar holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree and is a qualified chartered accountant from Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Kumar has over 25 years of experience in IT consulting, project, program management, pre-sales, large project transition work, finance and accounts. He has provided solutions in all major enterprise financial application suites like PeopleSoft, SAP, Oracle, and so forth. Core expertise of Kumar is to build financial model for building data analysis at the detailed level of various management reporting. Currently, he is associated with India as a Vice President Indian Operations to best-in-class delivery centers in India. Currently, Disys operates in US. I mean, they are basically from US. They have Chennai a center, Noida, Hyderabad, in multiple locations in the country. And the center is equipped with ISO 9001, ISO 27001, and CMI level 3 certifications. Disys India is serving some of the top 50 companies as their offshore delivery center, shared services, US global recruiting, including VMS and non-VMS models. Diligent in implementing global operating model to unify Disys operation. Disys India team has ramped over 600 people within the short span of 8 years. With this brief note about Mr. Kumar and Disys, I will start my journey with Mr. Kumar for about next 45 minutes or so. It will be an exciting ride for all of us. Kumar, before I get on to my questions to you, on behalf of all the leaders and professionals who are watching this, could you please share some more light on what exactly Disys is doing and what is your role here in India?
Okay, thanks, Anand. So, just to kind of give a brief about Disys, it started in the year 92. It's almost 25 years now. We celebrated our 25 years. And it's been in the consulting space predominantly. Currently, it's about like 11th largest staffing firm in the US. We've been rapidly growing over the years. So this has been started by two brothers from the Indian subcontinent, and they started this one in a very small shop, just like any other company. But now Disys right now employs more than 4,000 people across multiple continents. And we are very strong right now in North America and Asia Pac, including India and Brazil. We've been serving a lot of companies, which is like Fortune 50 companies. We've been, in fact, like I would say, our approach has been the partnership mode with most of the customers that we serve. So the partnership mode is typically involves like the investment from our side to take the required requirements of the customers, and we build the expertise for them. It's instead of just building the expertise for us. So it's been the thorough collaboration with most of the companies. And if you really look at it, the top 50 companies have been with us for the past 20 years. They never our services go at any point of time. We have been growing year on year, and despite this situation in COVID, still one of the companies, we never let go any people, and we also been growing, not even thinking about letting go people, but we are still augmenting our resources and the knowledge from many sources.
Wonderful, Kumar, and it's very positive news. And you said growing, that's a wonderful magic word of today's world when somebody is able to talk on that. So that's the leadership of Disys, friends. So let me get on to the questions, Kumar. The first question goes like this. The theme of this interaction, what I kept is leadership timelines, is what we kept. And since you are a great leader, I thought I'll take a lot of insights from you. The first question is, what exactly do you mean by leadership timelines?
So before attempting to answer this question, so just kind of give you a small this thing here. So when you introduce the great leader, I won't consider myself as a great leader. I'm a leader of work in progress, first of all. So it's been a journey. Leadership has always been a journey, and I'm just a leadership work in progress. Having said that one, the great leader is typically bestowed with the great teams. So it's a very important how we nurture the team. That's how the leadership also grows in station. Otherwise, leadership will be built only in a vacuum. So I would probably prefer to say that I have a great team that makes me feel better. So again, having said that, the very important concept over the period, like we have been stressing so much of importance on the four factors. It's typically called the land, labor, capital, and organization. So like typically required when you have a very limited resources, you're operating within a boundary, and your geographical reach is limited. But those are now not not there anymore. You really look at it like most of the companies operate 24/7, and resources reach is exponential right now. There is no geographical reach. So which means the land is kind of abundantly available. Only thing is you need to tap it. Even now, man started comparing these seas, multiple seas, and where it is like kind of the limitations what was posed, now it's not even there. And capital is like most of the companies now look at it just the venture capitalists and other guys, the other people are flush with funds and they are ready to help if you have a bright concept. Like they wanted to invest. So if you really look at it, like all these things are just a constraint we put in ourselves, and which is no more relevant right now. But what is relevant right now is the time, because all others are limiting factor, not a limiting factor, but time is a limiting factor. So if you really look at the arrow of time, it goes one way. So it doesn't go in a different direction. So which means that you lost a time, you lost it. That's it. You cannot gain it. So any which you are taking it, so it typically you need to look at your past and what you are right now in the current situation or present, and then how your decisions is affecting the future, which is very, very important. So that's why if you really look at it, just to kind of take it back, all our gods, if you really take them as leaders, because they are bestowed with a lot of powers, right? Roman god, for instance, Janus, has got two heads. So one side he looks at the past, one side he looks at the future. So he's typically the time. He's a god of time. But the Hindu mythology, they go one step higher. So for Brahma, it's four heads. Typically, it's not the present and past. He also looks at the past and the future. He also looks at the present and the mirror present, because in any present situation, it can go direction A or direction B. So he always looks at the directions, which direction it can possibly go, and the final destination. So typically, if you really look at it, like everyone has visualizing or put it together, the leaders should have not the unidirectional, multi-directional view of any decision which they are taking. That's very important, and that would probably say the main factor of production or main factor of efficiency for any organization. And that's where the timeless decisions comes in picture for any of the leaders.
Very nice, very nice. What more one can say, blending the Indian mythology into the leadership. So that's well said, Kumar. So having said this, of course, I have a lot of questions on your time theory. You talk a lot on the difference between the time management and the time leadership. So that I will keep it in the second portion of our discussion. So here I'll go with another sub question on this leadership timelines, where many organizations lack several things in building the enterprise. For example, there are people who lack in people, there are people who lack skills, there are multiple layers in which people operate and find their challenges in place. In your opinion, what exactly as a top priority many organizations fail to build? I mean, the lacking in any organization in your perspective.
Okay, so I'll probably take it like how we built our organization here, from being just about like a couple of people in 2011 to 600 plus people right now here in Disys India. And globally, we aligned ourselves to Disys family. So what happens in the journey, overall journey, is like if you really segment it, the first is the growth segment. Everybody wants to just keep jumping. You want to do, and whatever which you like, kind of you tomorrow is like as if everything comes to a standstill. You need to finish it today. So that kind of a mindset, everybody runs faster to kind of finish that.
Yes.
A phase wherein you now assess yourself. Okay, are you really doing? And this particular phase has been successfully been taken into future, or can this speed be sustainable, is sustainable, or can something different, so that like you reserve the energy and at the same time you still go with the higher efficiency. So then it becomes like you create a set of processes or built-in mechanism within the organization wherein new creativity thinking and the process thought process comes in picture, and you run. So it means that like you grab and you run, you grab and you run. So it's typically you adopt to the changes what is there inside the organization. And the third is like once you are into that mode, there is a invisible unifying factor that should happen automatically, create an atmosphere wherein like this is then becomes part of the overall cycle. Uh, if one goes up, the other comes down, and the one comes down, the other goes up. Kind of automatically, the thinking and the doing needs to happen, or the creativity and the actual happening execution needs to happen seamlessly, without even knowing about it. But the spoke, which is inside, it has to be created, or the thought process, it has to be created for everybody to aware that there are two sets of actions which are happening, but both actions are balancing each other. So that is the important learning step which we need to kind of nurture at the organization level. So here then, what is the primary objective? So any organization has got a hierarchical structure. So normally we say, like, okay, as a he's a leader or the manager. I wouldn't call it as a leader. I will say manager, and he's a subordinate at the junior level. I will command, and this guy has to finish. So that's the of command which goes from top to bottom. And typical organization, like anybody at the lower level, are not allowed to think or express their creativity. And people at the higher level, they may be very good in doing the work, but they keep thinking. So what happens is there is a disparity inside the organization. So here, when you have the hierarchical organization, wherein like this year there's a team member, next year becomes a team lead, after that manager, after that he becomes a senior manager, he goes in the direction, but unfortunately he gets the route. So the moment to the senior management or senior manager level, he thinks that like the junior has to do the work without knowing that like whether that is possible to accomplish or not.
Okay.
The other side of looking at it is like if you throw the work and say that you have to do that because it's where like your route is, if he's not able to perform, you need to perform. What happens in most of the organization is like then no, my role is I'm just managing the team. If the team member doesn't perform, I need to replace the team member. I'm looking for a replacement. So what actually happens is you lose the knowledge, you lose the experience, you lose the culture, you lose the what do you call it, the continuity in the organization. So here I would probably say you need a parallel organizations to create. You have a structure, it's a hierarchical structure, and you have a parallel organization which is basically thinkers and doers or executors or creative decision makers and kind of a structure. So wherein like there are two sets of people which are created in the organization and unified leader. The leader can be anywhere in the inside the organization. Thinkers can be anywhere inside the organization, and the doers can be anywhere in the organization. Does not mean that your KPI is it. All we say is like you give an opportunity for each one of them to come out of their current thought process and make them feel that they are also part of the organization as a leader or a future leader or as a thinker, future thinker, or a doer, or typically is like kind of a person who is a go-getter kind of a role. So you are elevating them from one set of position to the next set. And this is where, like I said, you have to think of the past and you have to think about the future also at the same time.
Yes, Kumar, having said this, I have a question here. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Do you mean to say that people have to have a dual role, both the doership as well as thinker or dreamer?
Okay, so I would give an example. So when you stay at home, you stay at home. You're not a manager. When you stay in the office, you stay as a manager. It does not mean that like you're performing a dual role. You're still the same person. But the question is like whether you can adapt to situations. That's
Absolutely.
the most
Absolutely.
important thing. So if you are able to adapt to the situations, a thinker can become a doer can become a thinker. Eventually, is like kind of he understands each other's perspective and become. At the end of the day, the leadership is all about connecting the dots of different people and at least take them on board when it is mattered most. So I would probably say that like that's the important trait of a thing to go further.
I mean, typically, like flexibility and adaptability quotient is what I think you're trying to convey in this context, if my understanding is correct. So here I have another question, which is a kind of a sub question within this leadership timelines. Typically, what are the challenges a leader undergoes? Because he is a man who connect the dots between the doer and the thinker, as per your analogy. So, what exactly the challenges leaders undergo in any organization?
Okay, so there are two sets of issues which comes to the leader's mind typically. One is, in my opening remark, I said I have a great team, and that's the one which is executing. The leader should trust the team so that the team delivers it. But unfortunately, what normally happens is uh, almost all the leaders the in a hierarchical structure. I feel that like I'm a senior manager, I should retain my position. So it is more position driven than the actual work that has to be executed. So when it is a position driven, then there are two things which comes out of it. Either it's a fear or an anger. If the leader is so powerful and the team is not performing, he's going to show his frustration through anger, because he's going to show that in every possible way, or belittle the team member and say you don't even know, it's like you're not doing this and things like that. So the criticism becomes the style of management. But when the leader is incapable, or is not so powerful, or is not able to exert the work from the team member, the fear grips him. So when it's a fear, it creates a different political scenario or environment within the organization. So that's where it becomes too difficult for a leader to kind of manage. So these two situations, right? Like any leader he overcomes, that's the most fundamental thing to become a leader. If he has to overcome both the fear and the anger, then it becomes like it's easier to kind of manage the team, because the leader is approachable. Once the leader is approachable, he is part of the team, and he's part of the thinking process, he's part of the doing execution process, and the team is part of the leadership process. So that's the most important thing for any organization and the leader.
Very nice, very nice. You really touched upon the two areas like fear and anger for the a leader who's actually a performer. The leader who doesn't really perform, the fear sets in for him to be able to perform better. So that's nicely put it. So with that, I'll have another question which on the leadership again is about widely talked about in industry. You've asked about, in my experience, about 7 to 8 years now. It's called situational leadership, which is I just want to take your insights on situational leadership. And have you ever encountered such leadership in your organization, and even yourself and the team in which you are working with? You have any studies or good story on that?
So the situational leadership, in fact, I can put it this way. So our vice president HR is a global trainer in situational leadership. Laura Smith. She Yes, in fact, whenever she comes to India, she trains people in the situational leadership and
Fantastic.
degrees of S and Ds and things like that. In a way, yes, the situational leadership becomes very, very important for any organization. And again, I would not touch too much detail into that one because the more like I just wanted to retain my originality than the acquired knowledge at this point of time. For the sake of it, like this, otherwise, like this is a great concept to kind of go for it. The main thing which all these management training provides, right? At some point of time, it provides the group conditioning. So when it becomes group conditioning, what happens is like it's very, very important in any organization. Like everybody has to have a certain degree of discipline and the rules which they need to work with. So in a situation like that, so how a leader should work with the team members in a situational leadership is very important to exhibit that rules and governance around it. But for me, it's like more looking at the other way. Unless a personal trait of a leader is changed completely, he would be bound by a condition through that situational leadership and try to follow that one. So just giving you an example, if you are not willing to execute that one wholeheartedly, there is a conflict within a leader and the rules which the organization is trying to impose through the situational leadership. So when there is a conflict between the self and the position which a leader holds, uh, obviously the self takes the precedence, and in everything, even the best of rules becomes more like a selfish pointers. Probably the implementation would fail. I probably look at it that way. So that's why I've said like the uh, between the S and Ds, right? Like it's all out there for the training at some point of time. But first and foremost thing, the leader should individually change his traits completely, transform into kind of a to acquire that one to get into that leadership role, and then move into the D's and S, like how you wanted to manage the team based on the situation. So typically, like S4 D4 is what you aspire, you can go for that one. But before to S1 to S1 D1 to S4 D4 or different quadrant, you still need to kind of realign yourself first before you get into the organizational alignment.
Very true. Very true. So nicely you put it. You talked about both flip and flop side of situation leadership too. So here again, a question normally arises out of executives who are putting about 5 years of experience or 7 years of experience in the industry, across industry, not just about IT or consulting. The question is here: is that leadership can emerge from anywhere in the organization? Do you agree with this concept?
Yes, I say that like the years of experience does not matter. That's typically like years of experience can give you the wisdom, but that's not give you the leadership ability. So that's if you really look at it, some of the freshers, fresh out of the college, start a company, become $1 billion company, who really guides the company to $1 billion company. So here, it's not the experience that matters. It may not be somebody who would be a very good e-commerce platform person, or he would have worked in an e-commerce company, or he would be a great HR person to kind of get as many resources from the industry. All those things are immaterial. But the only single trait is whether my idea would go into the market and I can sell that idea, and what conviction I have to sell that idea. So that's where I kind of keep putting the stress on the traits of the leadership rather than typically taking the number of years of experience. Number of years of experience is like, it's a generic, I would probably put it. You may not fail 40% of the time that experience can give the leadership ability. But
Okay.
really look at it like it's basically, again, that 40%, you are just putting the weight on that experience is basically to ensure that like you're not willing to take the risk of giving responsibility to the younger guy. Rather, you are more willing to offset that risk by giving it to an older guy. But I would say, kind of sometimes it can emerge from even the youngest lot, and he can show the way to kind of how he can get into the organization at the highest level.
That's a great hope you are sharing, Kumar, because India is having a population more than 50% are youngsters in the age group of 25 to 35, as they say. So we need more leaders from that fraternity as well. Kumar, now we dwell more on leadership timeline. So let me move on to the next topic. Is all about time theory, the time concept which we talked about some time ago on phone. I thought I was completely inspired by that, so I thought I'll ask this question. What exactly do you mean by time concept?
Okay. So any decision, as I in the opening remark which I put it, right? Any decision when you take it, the decision should stand for the time, like be it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I'll put it very simple thing. Mahatma Gandhi's non-violence is relevant even today. Uh, whether we can amend certain things, but like still that is more than required. So his thought came from the very fact that during that period it was more world war was one of the main thing world over everywhere. The conquering was the everybody's mind. So a simple thought is like you don't need to conquer the country to conquer somebody. Just conquer the minds of the people to conquer the country. So that was the main thought. So now what has happened? It is reversed. World like Mahatma Gandhi's statue and all those principles, everybody has kind of started taking it, including Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela, whoever. They started getting the inspirations from him, not necessarily the same thing which they need, but the inspiration I'm talking about. So the time tested. The decision to go non-violent is time tested at some point of time. And even today it is relevant. So similarly, there are many organizations which they have started. Many fail, but many organizations when they started with the smallest idea, but they become billions and billions of dollars, even relevant today. And they are relevant today just because they are able to adapt to that one and they keep moving towards that. But the first foremost thought, which is very, very important, that is relevant. It is relevant even today. And just a simple example is like Windows, for instance. We cannot live without operating system Windows at this point of time. And it is relevant despite too many technology which has come. It is relevant even today. And how many people now can live without copy and paste? So it's a kind of a simplest cut copy paste is the simplest thought, but like now it's everybody is using it almost like at least 30 times a day as one of the main feature. So it's I'm not comparing that one as a great decisions to kind of look at it, but I'm saying the simplest thought which can carry forward and that is very important and it has to be tested in time, like kind of whatever goes, like it has to the concept should not be diluted and it should continue to be inspiring the people to take it up further. So that is the important step towards the time concept. And any of the decision taken by the leader, it's very important to kind of align with that one. So now, let me give you in an organizational perspective. So a doer always like an execution person who's executing always like to execute and he would like to run faster and he the pride and things is for him is to kind of uh, fast and he just wanted to show to the world that like he can execute anything in the world, whereas a thinker on the other hand look at it differently. They always think as if it is typically unless you plan it well, unless you do everything in a structured manner, unless all these things are put in place, you know about your past, you know about your current situation, and you really need to know what is there in the future. You cannot be executing. So these two elements in the organization is completely contrasting thought process. So The time, any of these time concept should take into consideration these two groups and align it within the organization. So if you really look at it, if doers and thinkers align, doers live in the present world, whereas the thinkers live in the past and the future. And if you
Okay.
really align the doers and the thinkers, or the executions and the creative minds, then you operate completely, balance it really well. But unfortunately, what most of the organization, right? Either you have a set of execution people or the doers, and you have a very less thinkers, or you have a lot more thinkers and the very small doers. So what will happen is, uh, think always like I would rather call keep thinking, and without doing anything, at some point of time, the organization becomes lazy, and they may be in a position to kind of do the work, and the frustrations and the criticisms and all those will be part of the organization. So any of the decisions which are taken gets criticized at a later point of time because it is not execution, it is not completed, or unfinished work will be there always. But whereas if the doers are more and the thinkers are less, what will happen is they just, without a purpose, they keep running it. So, which means they live in the current world always without looking what was done in the past, or without looking at it, what would happen in the future if you are continue to carry out this activity. So, the set of time expanded from the past, present, and the future is completely lost if you take out one of the elements in the organization. So, which is very important, vital that you balance it out, both the doers and the thinkers. So if you balance it out, like what will happen is uh, you are not bound by the time, or rather you understand the time well and you be part of the time. So which means that like you are decisions, whatever the decisions which you go through, technically like kind of it takes into account what was done in the past, and just have that information which is available, and how things behave, and what is currently what we are doing, whether it is relevant. The past which are unrelevant, like we are going to leave it as an experience, and whatever is relevant we are going to carry forward as the lessons which we need to carry forward in the future, where we wanted to achieve that one, gives the perspective of that like it will be continuously evolve and continuously go, and there is no dilution. So you don't change in the middle way, rather you transform yourself from one state to another state easily. So that is where the leadership decision process or the time is important concept for any of the decision process.
Mhm. Here you said, doers are typically people who are oriented towards the present, and the thinkers are oriented towards the future. And the leader is the one who strike a balance between these doers and thinkers. So I have a question. I have a question which is a practical question to many of the organizations. Since I come from MSME background, a micro, small, medium enterprise background, where a small group of people work, about 50 people, 100 people work in an organization. Is there any proven framework, like the percentage of doers and percentage of thinkers, to be allocated or to be framed up in the organization?
No, again, if these are rule bound, right, like in any organization, then what will happen is typically you may not have the you may not strike a balance really. So it depends on each organization how they wanted to kind of structure it and go for it. Especially for the MSME, the biggest issue for the MSME is an entrepreneur or the CEO or the leader. He has to wear different hats. So he has to sit with the doer, he has to sit with the thinker, he has to learn, he has to unlearn. So the challenges posed to him is like typically he builds the whole culture, right? So it's typically the whole organization is dependent on how he wanted to build it. So typically there are two things which are very important. One is building the organizational culture, because culture is going to take you to the next level, and the culture is like just people talk it like kind of culture in a sense, typically how person should behave in the office, how they should come at 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock. These are not typically culture. These are typically rules to be followed. But the culture is typically like how you do the process of decision making, how you collaborate with so many people, and how you are taking them along with you. Your thought should be the thought of every person in the organization. If there are 100 people, all
Like, yeah, like the DNA, as they call the DNA of the organization. Right?
exactly, yes. So the 100 people should have the same message, and they should receive the same message, and they should and perceive it as the same message, not differently, and they take it along with the leader. So which means that any new member who comes and joins inside the organization automatically imbibe the DNA. So they don't need to search for something new. And in this, the doers and thinkers which you asked, like, should it be in a percentage? It need not be in a percentage. Every doer has a thinker in his own self, and every thinker is there. But the thing is, what is important right now is the leader should recognize the whether somebody has a is a doing capability or somebody has a thinking capability, and accordingly so that like it works well. Because typically you cannot put somebody and make sure that like sit in a conference room and say you have to think. It is a punishment rather not be willing to do that one. So rather make sure that like whatever is capable of handle it better. So that's a prime message out there.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I guess nobody can be rigid on their own way of taking decisions. So we have to be very, very flexible to move forward. It's a wonderful articulation, Kumar. So I'll go to the next portion of our session, which is about, again, leadership. But what are the important traits a leader must have or must possess?
Okay. So I come from the eastern side of the world. So I would rather be influenced by a lot more Eastern philosophies, rather looking at this way. First trait is the leader should think it's not a position or authority which he can influence, or it's not a wealth which he has received from his forefathers or something like that. It's a responsibility. It's a responsibility towards the organization, towards the society, towards the rest of the people. Because any ethical leadership is going to create more leadership in the future. So one leader, even if he creates 100 leaders out of his organization, that 100 is going to produce even more in the future. So what he is proposing right now, in 50 years' time, he might have created an army of people with the same traits. So here, that's where I said like I'm more channelized to the Eastern principle. Follow the trait which can possibly create a ethical society or the organization, so that it becomes much more stronger, and it grows stronger. I have seen multiple times like it grows stronger when you build that kind of a structure. And the most important trait is like this happens only when the leader's mind, body, and soul, everything is aligned together. So it's very important that like as a leader, it's just not like somebody who has a very strong muscles can become a leader. That can happen in a probably like a traditional army. Even now it has changed right now. So it's like typically you need to have a set of people who thinks much faster than like any other person. So which means you need to have a mind, the body very, very strong, because that's where like all your commands and things can take place. And you can really execute 24/7. You have to be on the job. If the mind and body is not strong, you're not going to be on the job. And
Very true.
leadership comes with that one. So you have to constantly be, and nowadays like emails are coming from every quarter, probably like even at 12:30 midnight or
Yes.
and if it is not every email needs to be answered very quickly, but like if there is a situation which happens that like you are supposed to answer that one, the clarity of thought should come even at that time. So which means if the mind and body is not sound, you're not going to respond to it properly. So it's very, very important to keep that intact. And I would add to that one, probably people call it as self, or people call it as your heart or your soul, or they call it as you, whatever name which you call it, that has to be aligned. because at the end of the day, that's the leadership, and that's what it's going to. Your body is going to be like a doer for you, and your mind is going to be a thinker for you. Your own self is going to be the leader for you. That's going to drive the entire world. So if I may say, if in an organization you are looking at the doer, thinker, and the leader, you yourself have all those elements within you. And if you are balanced, then you balance it out at the organization level. So the important trait is to kind of how you balance out yourself, because most of the leaders, what happens is they come with a mindset that like I'm a CEO of this company or an entrepreneur of this company or a country head of this company. But unfortunately, they don't take people along with them. The biggest problem is like the doers and thinkers, they don't go along. It's a simple way that like even they themselves have a conflict of mind, body, and soul. They will exhibit that one in every actions outside also, and that's one of the major issue right now in terms of most of the organization get disconnected from its own leaders.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, Kumar. I think you really blended very well. In fact, while starting the session, I was thinking of this, and you really touched these points. You know, the Eastern philosophy, Ramana Maharishi, great saint of South India, used to say, "Who am I?" And I straight away go to US, where the Arnold Schwarzenegger also said, "It's not important what you want to become; it's more important who you want to become." And even Sundar Pichai recently delivered a talk on 22nd March for the, I guess, Harvard Business School or one of the universities. And he also talked in the same line. So you really touched upon the philosophical aspects into the leadership. This is something amazing. Thank you very much for these insights. And now let me move on to the MSMEs, because I come from, as I told you, from micro, small, medium enterprises as a strategic advisor. I just wanted to listen to you because this is a message which I wanted to convey to all the MSME leadership. Typically MSMEs are, for the people who are watching here, typically an organization run by an entrepreneur or a business owner or a startup entrepreneur who has got about 10 people, 20 people or 100 people working with him, and he builds his business. And he has to do, A to Z of his activities. So I'd like to ask Kumar, with your wealth of experience over the 25 years, how do you really look at this MSME sector and MSME leadership?
Yeah, so I'll put it differently. The thought, MSME is a thought which basically they have it because of the turnover criteria. But typically, I would rather put it, they always need to look at it as if they are a part of the large organizations. Their contribution to the society is much larger than what they are just producing as a quantity, right? Because that's a concept to take them to the higher level. So when we started Disys, I would put it this way and start with a small introduction. In 2011 with 2 people, and then about like 2015, about like 150 people. We were like kind of slowly progressing. In fact, like at that point of time, I'm not trying to create a branding for you, Anand, but like we kind of associated with you guys. So you know how we progressed it at some point of time. One of the training sessions which we handled at that time was like empowering and also productivity enhancement. So what was done in that training was to kind of give the leaders the thought process wherein like, if you are doing a job X, how are you going to delegate this job to the next person? So the immediate response, I think Prakash handled it well. So immediate response from everybody was like, if I'm going to give this, delegate this, I don't have any job, I may be laid off. So the first is, as I said earlier, it's a fear. So when the fear is there, they're not going to progress next to the next level. They're going to keep it. They're going to hold it very tight, and that grip will not allow them to flexibly allow them to go to the next branch. So what has done that training is like typically it changed the mindset of people. They said like nobody is asking you to delegate, but start thinking about delegating it. So one is an execution, other is a thinking process. So you start thinking so that like at some point of time, when you feel that like you need to delegate, you delegate. But the thinking process should happen. That was like one of the eye openers for us from Prakash, like when we had the training. And after that, like there are a series of programs which we did to kind of create that atmosphere. One was the culture curator program, which we did it. Culture curator program is more in terms of building the uh, organizational internal culture, which needs to be built in. Everybody understand where the organization is going. It not necessarily a leader comes there and say that, like, okay, tomorrow we are going to make 20 million, 30 million. Rather, if it is among themselves, they keep talking and they build culture. So what happens is next day when they come with the mindset that like they need to make 100 million. So it is typically like on a day-to-day basis that the information gets translated, because person X, when they say, they perceive it differently. But if it is a person Y, their own colleagues, they say they take it differently. Just like your typically we all go through, right? When your parents say you don't listen too much, but your friends say you listen to that one. So it is so which means that the information needs to go, but the information needs to go in a way which is like kind of the organizationally there is a culture behind that one. So the trust factor is built based on that one. In an MSME scenario, I would rather recommend build that culture, build that trust through not through normalized channel, rather to create the other channels which are very, very important, which is the culture programs. That's what very important. And in Disys, we did one more program called Life. The very purpose of program Life is we wanted to say that our employees, you guys are not resources, you guys are not typically like any other non-living things. In Disys, you guys are life, which means that for any life, it progresses and there is a maturity pattern which is there and how they progress. And typically for every life, they have an ambition to progress. So that exact ambition which we map in our life program. And we won CA award for that life program.
Okay. Very
Um,
good.
we kind of provided that life program in such a way that like there is a mentorship program, there is a life program, there's a culture curator program. So many programs which we built basically to create the thinkers and doers within the organization.
Very nice.
MSME, it's very, very important because as I said, the leader or the entrepreneur with 100 people, he has to do everything, be it sales, be it finance. So practically it is, I would say, impractical to kind of constantly think everything in a right direction. So there will be, suppose if he's going to go attend his sales meetings and focus on sales, the finance team would be missing him most. And typically is like kind of when an organization, one team is missed out and the other team is kind of given a lot of protection, cry will become more from the team which is missed out. And that will build more time consuming for the leaders to kind of set it right. And his 24/7 may not be enough to kind of set it right, because now he has to balance it out and the balancing act will be very, very difficult. So here, if you build the channels, multiple channels, so that the information or a transparency is built to kind of get that information. And overall, everybody is talking the same language. You don't build the political organization. Uh, the organizational politics is not taking gray point, it's not taking differently. Rather, you structure it in such a way that like, gray points are reduced, but multiple channels, the same message is going to build the DNA. So, kind of maybe may sound like a theory, but at some point of time, it's very important. So that happens. The delegation is so clean, and everybody knows the responsibility and take it further. And we are in fact both the promoters and the upper management in US and here we always like kind of a mother and child approach. So at a child level, we nurture them so closely. We don't leave them. We hold their hands. We create atmosphere. It grows up. At some point of time, when they become grown up, you take a state of old parents. Basically, you follow them. You don't typically go and tell them like you do this. Rather, we give them the freedom to advise us like what should be done. So we have grown multiple teams that way typically, and that's very important for the MSME to grow. because they should not be just constrained to what they are doing in a physical quantity. Their anticipation should be to kind of make it much bigger than what they are right now.
Awesome, Kumar. You covered, I think, the length and breadth of the leadership here. In fact, a couple of minutes ago, you said in my previous question beautifully that the leadership is not about authority; it is about responsibility. So that really sync very well. And people are watching, especially the startup owners, MSME owners. On behalf of them, I would like to ask you one more sub question on the same subject. The biggest challenge, because since I deal with MSMEs on a day-to-day basis, so I find that many of the people, they have great products, great technologies, and they have go-to-market plans. The biggest issue is they are not able to identify the next level of leadership right below the CEO or the business owner. So if always they say, if I'm able to duplicate myself with one clone, one person equivalent to me, or 80% of my job is done, but they are not able to do it. So what is the one significant impediment? Why they are unable to choose the second level leadership, which is equivalent to their capabilities?
Okay. So I would rather put it in a slightly different way. So rather, I would not like to replicate myself one more Kumar, because somebody would be much better than me. I always look at it that way. If I can do this job, someone X would be doing much better than what I can do. So to me, it's like right now I'm in a state wherein like I can nurture that guy to become better than what I can do. So the moment we think that like I want to replicate, there is a self-interest which is basically like I would be continue to hold this, and you will be doing what I'm saying. So which means that you don't allow the other person to be a thinker, rather you make him as a doer, and he will never have a creative ideas behind that one. You will always be following the ideas of what you had. That's the biggest challenge for any MSME, because the reason, obvious reason, in an MSME, typically a leader puts his own money, puts his own risk, and too much of things at stake. And when those are there, typically there is a sense of insecurity, which I was talking to you earlier, would be there. So if I blow out all my things, so what is the fallback for me? So you have a hold always, and make sure that like he comes to that within that one. So in a typical scenario, he cannot expand beyond a certain level. It will be just like there is a invisible hold, and he is staying within that invisible hold. But if you really look at it, you allow them to, once you trust them, you make them like, this is 100% which I'm going to build, and this guy is capable of building that one. Nurture them, make sure that like this guy is going to be much better than my version of it, and then allow them to freely execute their mind at some point of time. So of course, because of the structure, the equity is with the owner, and the control is with the owner. Absolute control is with, so he can always pull back any time when it is needed. But again, the concept of the Roman god, you have two faces. Like you have to see his past also. You have to see his future also. How does it work it out? Because at any point of when a person is given a leadership position, definitely from the same guy, when he was there in one point, becomes a leader, he changes his behavior, traits, everything, because it is not, he won't be the same person again after he becomes something else. And that's where it's very, very important for a leader to kind of keep looking at him, how he wanted to shape it up. Again, as I said, it's a DNA, which is very, very important. You make sure that that guy, whoever you are nurturing, falls into that DNA. And you don't need to take care of it daily. Rather, your thought itself can create him like, this is what you want him to do. And there is a skill given to him to also to perform.
Absolutely. Very well said. In fact, the environment in which conditioning is what is finally brings the leader out of the systems. It's very nice, interesting, Kumar. So thank you so much for this. And we are now moving into the last portion of our interview to conclude on time. The last portion of my question is all about taking the business cycle from, let's say, from order to cash or procure to pay. So how do you really look at this model?
Okay, so in a typical manufacturing MSME or the biggest challenge right now is to balance it out the order to cash and the procure to pay. There are two big cycles which are out there, and the order to cash and if both are balanced well, the order to cash and the procure to pay, the business runs much better. If one is lagging behind, then what happens? It will be a strain on your working capital, or the other side of it is like kind of you might receive all your cash in hand. Cash is absolutely as a cost when you carry it more, and if it's not put in a productive assets, then it becomes a cost, too much cost for you, and you will not be able to get the required profitability. So in either case, like the balancing is very very important. What do you take in an order to cash? Like typically what happens is the customer would be willing to pay within 30 days, but with a lesser, with more discounts. Or some customers will be willing to pay in 60 days with a lesser discount. And the guy who is willing to pay in a less days would be looking for a higher discount. Just similarly, in a procure to pay also, the condition is a vendor would be willing to supply in 60 days time, but he would be expecting that the payment happens immediately and willing to give more discounts typically. But the other guy is willing to supply within 15 days, demands a higher money for order fulfillment. So it's like the situation here is for to balance it out both the procure to pay and the order to cash. There are various methods, typically the ABC method of inventories, stock informations, and also you have economic order quantities and other statistical methods. So many methods are there, but at the end of the day, what is that which we are trying to achieve, which is very very important. If our ability to do the customer satisfaction and fulfilling the order is the main thing which we wanted to achieve here, or is our priority or organization is basically to make sure that like take the leadership position. So that is the fundamental thought process which the leader should have. If the company would like to take it to the leadership position, there are certain short-term give-ups which will be there. But at some point of time, they build a partnership of customers and the vendors. The partnership of customers and vendors, I need to say that like when you are in trouble, the customer is going to be with you, despite like they know that very well within that time period, you may not be able to fulfill their orders. And when typically like when you are in requiring very quickly and you don't have the means to acquire the material, vendors will be with you. So which means that like a very very strategic approach of building the partnership, MSMEs have to build the partnership, not necessarily look into very clearly like okay because now this guy is giving 2% discount to me, I will switch the loyalty to from person A to person B. Rather, I would like to look at it like in what all the situations he has supplied me, what are the situations he has taken me out of the situation risk. So those are very important decision points, basically to build the relationship. And more than anything, at some point of time, the MSMEs themselves need to support each other MSMEs. That's important to kind of build that ecosystem, because at some point of time, what happens, this ecosystem will take them to the next level. Be it in even, for instance, you don't need to go to the bank to get the finance. Sometimes you may even have a MSME which can support the other MSME by supplying entire products. It all boils down to like how we build the relationship, and here thinkers play a more role than the doers. So the doers think the current situation and take the 2% discount, or whoever is the lesser bidder. But the thinkers do the present and the past. They look at it and how to build a relationship with them and take the partnership approach, and which is very important for any MSME to sustain in this market.
Wonderful, Kumar. Wonderful. I mean, you have touched upon several points in this show, especially in the last portion of some aspects of the ecosystem that you said. I guess chambers like where I'm connected with complex terms, we have MSME subcommittees, and a thought occurred to me the moment you started sharing about your insights on MSME's ecosystem. I guess once the MSME clusters are formed, of course, there are a lot of clusters already being formed, especially in the Indian continent. So there are people who can think, like, you know, in your theory, like thinkers. There are people who can do it, and there are people who are at the leadership level. Balance the thinkers and doers. It's something phenomenal, and connecting back to your, you know, the body, mind, and soul, which is something phenomenal. Kumar, we have come to the end of this session. I almost have taken 1 hour of your time. Thank you so much. You have all the complex subjects in a very sophisticated manner, in a very, very simplest simplicity with great insights for leaders, especially the budding leaders in the startup organizations and MSME organizations to get inspired with. I'm amazed, you know, when you said in 2011 with a 2-member team, Disys India started, and today your organization is 600 plus people across 3-4 locations in the country, which clearly shows the leadership at the helm of affairs. Your organization is building this brick by brick. Kudos to you and salute the entire team of Disys for building this great enterprise. And thank you very much for your time. And if you have any last few words about the show, feel free to share.
No, it's like kind of the only thing which I would rather touch right now is the current situation, right? So most of the companies are now, it's a very difficult situation to kind of run through. Of course, the only way which we can build at this point of time is like we have to build a relationship with our employees and rest of our partners so well, so connected, which is very important. And that's why one of the traits of the leaders, like I also put it, the self-connection is very important and the reflection is very important. This will typically help us to overcome this one. And I would pray for everybody to be safe in this situation and also to build very large organizations in the future.
Thank you. That's really a good message to all of us. And thank you very much, Kumar, for joining this show. And it's a great insight and great to connect with you. I hope this video can be shared with as many people as possible through our digital team. With this, I would like to end this session by announcing one more update to all the viewers who are watching this. Tomorrow, we are going to have an interview conversation with Rajagopalan, who's the founder and president of SME Chamber of India, Mumbai. He is also SME Promotion Council's founder and president. And he's going to be with us tomorrow between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. So please join me tomorrow at 1 p.m. on Facebook Live. Thank you, Kumar, and thank you, every one of you.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for inviting me.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye.